to do. Hey up, everyone. Bit early. Well, that's a good start to the podcast. We try to get all techie with the overlays and the fresh look, and we fumble it like that. But welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And on tonight's edition, we are going to be reacting and reviewing all of the National League transfers so far in the season. We're going to be looking at every single squad, seeing how they're shaping up, maybe give our thoughts on how we feel they may be doing going into towards the season, if they need to make any more signings or not. But Paul, firstly, of course, joining me tonight, Wheelstone, for yourself, how are you doing at the moment?
The team seemed to be shaping up quite nicely, to be honest, Luke. It was a little bit of an unknown for us when we got Matty Taylor in as a manager, because obviously he's been at Shrewsbury and Walsall and hasn't really pulled up any trees, and we weren't really sure of what he knew of the non-league game. And he's brought in Paul Hughes, who's an assistant who's very well versed at non-league and has managed clubs at sort of National League level. So actually over the last few weeks of the pre-season, they've looked better than I probably would have thought. He's added a real bit of experience through the middle, signed Craig Eastman from Sutton, Enzo Beaujewine from Eastleigh, and obviously was at Notts County. He's gone with there was another one of them's got out of my head now, but Ashford. He's brought in Ashford from Ireland as a centre forward. So Mariappa, Adrian Mariappa. Sorry, that was the one that escaped my memory. So he's gone sort of a centre half, centre midfielder, centre forward, wide player. So he's added some real experience, is what probably the squad required. Along with, he's kept a lot of the youngsters from last year. He's kept Alex Dyer on. It's a real bonus for us. How many games he'll play and how many minutes he'll play is still to be seen, but a real good experienced chap who knows the club and will probably help the management in that transition. So listen, I'm fairly confident. I don't think Wheelstone will get relegated. We'll put that on record now. I genuinely don't think. I think there's going to be 4 worse teams than us. But like every season we've had in the National League, we need to start quickly and get some points on the board.
Yeah, you certainly do. And I want to hear what everyone else's thoughts on your teams going into the National League campaign. Are you optimistic? Maybe a little bit pessimistic going into the campaign based on your transfer business? Of course, we look at the moment, and I think the majority of fans will probably be quite confident and optimistic going into the season, as you usually are, about your own clubs. But there's a few sides, that you look at and you might think, will they be able to live up to the expectations? You look at the promoted sides, how many of them have recruited enough, which I think most sides who get promoted have to do. How many of them have recruited enough to be able to compete in the National League? So it'd be good to be able to hear what your guys' thoughts are on that. But before we get on to transfer business, something that I want to speak a little bit about tonight, and it's quite, I think, upsetting really for the National League, and I think it's going to be a major loss, is TNT Sports, of course, are no longer going to be partnering with the National League, which means the 5:30 kickoffs, those amazing games that we've seen in the past, when a goalkeeper goes and scores a last-minute equaliser in a playoff final, a top-of-the-table first versus second clash between Wrexham and Notts County, and many more moments that we've had over the years, they will no longer be televised on TNT Sports. For me, you look at that and you have to say, when you look at the National League at the moment, the exposure that it's got over the last couple of seasons, we've seen Wrexham be in the division, and the amount of Americans that have probably being introduced to English football, and particularly the lower leagues. Of course, Notts County being such a big club and well-known club around the globe as well, them being in the division, we've kind of lost, I think, of the attraction in that way, I'd probably say as well, with those exiting the division over the last couple of seasons. But for now, to TNT Sports no longer be televising games, I personally feel it's a major loss to the National League, and people will be less aware of your Halifaxes, your Maidenheads, your Solihuls, and what football really is about.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, Luke, because obviously when TNT took it on, it was probably a similar feeling with them. Their production and their ability to showcase National League has improved and got better and more exposure over the last few years. And, Adam Summerton and Adam Virgo, great commentary team, and, they know their onions when it comes to National League. I think we just got to give Dazen the opportunity to see what they can do. I think I saw tweets earlier saying, please get people in who know what they're talking about. Don't just get celebrities' faces, YouTube stars and everything else. Give the National League the respect it deserves. And until we sort of fully know what the subscription costs are and how we can access it through Dazen, then I think, we just got to give them the opportunity. The benefit, I assume, is that there's more money going to the clubs in terms of exposure to the football, to the TV, in terms of, will there be more games? Are they getting more money per live stream? I don't know the ins and outs of the financial deal, but to sign a multi-year deal with a new broadcaster, it's got to be worth financially to the league and to each individual team. So look, all I know is I'm going to still be commentating for Wealdstone on National League TV that might be used for Dazen, and obviously a lot of other volunteers across the National League teams who do that will be still being involved. So I think we just got to give it a chance. It's a real shame that TNT haven't been able to do a deal with the National League, but let's just hope they may take some of what TNT have done very well and put it over to their broadcast, and we'll see even better production than we have recently.
Let's hope so. Of course, I have seen rumours online. I don't know if it's official, but apparently it's going to be a subscription where you're going to pay a monthly subscription, and then it's not just the National League. There's other leagues as well that they cover around Europe, and apparently it's going to be like £15 a month to be able to, watch these games. I don't know how much how much the National League's going to get covered over that, if it's going to be like a weekly thing where they're going to televise at least one game a week, like TNT really seems to do over the last couple of seasons or so. So let's hope so anyway. But yeah, certainly sad times. I know for the channel, for me, I remember, Adam Summerton giving me his time coming on the channel, and it was a great insight getting, what he had to say about what were happening in the National League. And of course, Evan McLean's come on, and he's a big reason why and where we're at today, where we've got our own podcast on the National League. I know I used to do my stuff on Halifax when I first started doing YouTube, and at the end of the season, I got him on to talk about the National League and the title race a few seasons ago. And he came on, and it was a great insight. And ever since then, everyone was saying, look, you need to start doing a National League podcast after that. And, it gave me the confidence to do that. And now, we've got this where we do it every Thursday and we talk about the National League. So I'll always be thankful for that to them guys. And I do wish them the best in the future. But anyway, back to it. Let's have a look at what people have been coming in and saying tonight before we do have a look at some transfers surrounding the whole of the National League. Someone's coming in and said, thoughts on Kabongo Tishimanga training with Southend and our overall recruitment. Now, that's something that I've not heard about personally. I don't know if you've heard about it, Paul, but that would be a major signing and quite a statement signing, I would say, from Southend. Of course, he's a player that's clearly proven himself in the past to be prolific in this division, and probably a player that should be playing in the Football League. But due to injuries and it not working out at certain clubs, he's still in the National League. So that would be quite a big signing, wouldn't it, for Southend?
Oh, man. The ability to sign someone who can score goals at any level is the holy grail for any football manager. And, we spoke to managers this week and they were talking about signing centre forwards, and it had to be sort of £2,500 a week, and can you find them, that sort of scenario. So if someone like Shimanga comes onto the market, you'd be bonkers not to have a look at him. And I remember him playing for Oxford City in the National League South, and he tore it up. he clearly went into National League with Boreham Wood, tore it up, and unfortunately his time at Peterborough hasn't really worked out. I have, for one reason, I know he broke his leg, which is really unfortunate, but if someone can get him playing, I mean, even when he came to Boreham Wood back end of last season when they were struggling, he made a bit of a difference. So I think if he can get a decent pre-season under his belt, get himself fully fit, that is a natural born goal scorer at National League level. And that would be, I think, a game changer for Southend, because, they're always a strong team. We know that. And, they've got themselves sorted off the field. If they can start getting that quality like Shimanga, then they're going to be a real threat.
Southend have got the majority of the squad from last season, haven't they? That just finished just outside of the playoffs. I know I keep repeating it on the podcast, but if it wasn't for that 10 points deduction, they would have finished inside the playoffs. So if you just keep that squad together and add to it with a little bit more depth, which of course Southend are the one side in this division that significantly need more depth because of issues that they've had off the field, you would like to think that Southend will be up there this season inside the playoffs and maybe even pushing towards the top three, because we talk about it being so open. You predict like a top three at the moment, and I think everyone's predictions are going to be different. Everyone's title favourites will be different, where last season it was everyone was probably saying Chesterfield are going to win the league, Oldham will come second, because they were the two big spenders, where now I think there's probably about 5 or 6 teams that you'd probably predict to be in the title race, and you'd probably say over half of the division, maybe even 3/4 of the division. You could make a good point on why they might finish inside the playoffs this season. Someone else has come in and said, evening, guys. Hope you are well. Yep, we are good tonight, Kevin. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you are well too. And then we've also had Anthony, I think it is. Hi, Luke. Is Jack Hunter a good signing for Hartlepool, and what will he bring to the team? For me personally, when you look at Jack Hunter, he doesn't particularly do anything wrong. I wouldn't say he'd do anything extraordinary. He's a steady Eddie in the midfield. Defensively very good. Doesn't offer too much going forward. But to be fair, you look at Hartlepool last season, and I think the one area where they might have struggled a little bit was defensively, and they're strengthening up with a CDM that's versatile as well and can play in alternative positions. For me, I think it's a good signing. And, we talk about Hartlepool and the injury crisis that they had last season with Mancini getting injured. The centre-half Dodds as well got injured, and players having niggles throughout the season. They were quite unfortunate last season. If this Hartlepool side can stay fit as a team, unlike last season, you'd like to think they'll be inside the playoffs this season. Are they a side for you, Paul, that you can see having an improvement from last year? Or
I think so. They need a bit of stability. Obviously, they had a couple of managers last year, didn't they? And the ownership decided to change Kevin Phillips when he seemed to be doing okay against the backdrop of not a favourable sort of squad and injuries. But you're having Darren Sarl in there. He knows National League. He knows how to get into the playoffs. He's from what I understand, he's real no nonsense. He knows how to manage teams at this league. So I think if they can stick with him and address some of their problems, just a bit more consistency. They're a big enough club to be up there, Luke, aren't they? The crowds they attract, the size of the club in that area. I know they sort of have to compete against some of the bigger ones around there, but they're a well-supported club. They've been higher. They know what it takes. That hopefully they're just going to be a bit more stable, a bit like some of the other clubs. If these can just get that stability and just let the team get on with it on the field, then they'll be okay. But they're ones to watch, I would suggest.
They signed Adam Campbell as well from Crawley Town, and he's someone who proved himself at Gates and they managed to get that move into the Football League. Of course, I don't think it's particularly worked out there for him, but for him to come back in to the National League now at Hartlepool, I think somewhere that he's near that location.
I think he did very well at Crawley. Crawley wanted to keep him, or the fans wanted him to stay. I think it was an element of being homesick and wanting to go back up to the northeast. So, to get someone of his quality and I would suggest confidence at this stage, having played in the Crawley team that absolutely dominated the last 2 months of the season in League Two, that's a really, really good signing for them up top to sort of bolster. Lost Josh Umerer, replacing with Adam Campbell. To me, that's an upgrade. So, they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, they certainly are. And then someone's put Halifax mid, so I think not particularly too impressed, but maybe not a crisis from a Halifax fan there. I'm quite optimistic as a Halifax fan going into this season. You know, you look at the signings that we've made. We've had some major losses. You know, Stott, Golden, on paper looks bad considering defensively was our strong point last season, and we are a team, and Millington is the type of manager that likes to build from the back and firstly focus on the defence. But for me, you know, you look at the replacements. Will Smith, someone that's fallen out of the Football League, was a bit of a fringe player at Harrogate, and coming back into the National League now has clearly proven himself in this division. And the other players that we've signed as well. I'm quite optimistic going into this season. You know, I think one issue last season for me was going forward. We didn't particularly have a prolific goal scorer, and I think if we did, we probably could have finished higher up inside the playoffs. Of course, it was quite a successful season considering our budget. But for me, of course, we've signed Zach Emerson, who's come from Blackpool. And, you know, when you look on Blackpool's account, or if you look on the opposition's team, and when they're sad to see him go, you know, that's a positive when you're bringing in a player, especially when it's a player in League One. So for me, when you're seeing comments below, like fans saying that he was our best youngster, up and coming youngster, why we let him go? For me, that's a massive positive for Halifax going into this season. And he might be that player that we've been missing for the last couple of seasons who can maybe get 15 to 20 goals a season. Because if you've got a striker like that and a good defence, you're going to be well off, aren't you, this season?
Oh, without doubt. You need to score goals in this league to progress. You know, you can... I think, you know, Mark White quite clearly said it to us on Wednesday night, Mark. You know, you can defend, but you need to score goals. You know, you can stop goals going in, but to win games, and you just got to get that goal score. And like I just said, it's the holy grail. And anyone, the likes of Halifax, Maidenhead, you know, Wealdstone, whoever it else may be down, sort of knocking about down in that bottom half. As soon as you get anyone who's half decent as a centre forward, they're going to get snapped up.
Yeah.
By an EFL club, by a full-time club in the National League, by a National League club that can give them a better contract. However, because everyone wants the same players, and you know, if you can go and find someone from an academy like Emerson who can adapt to the men's side of the game and having not had many appearances, maybe, then brilliant. You know, get 1 or 2 seasons out of them. And then if you've got to move them on for a bit of money because they've got to progress and go up the tables, then fair enough, you know. But if you can keep hold of those sorts of players and nurture them and find them, then you're doing very, very well.
I think when you're a side like Halifax, and you've spoken a little bit about it there, when you haven't got the biggest budgets, you know, it were quite, I think, I don't know if concerning is the word, but quite eye-opening when Mark White told us the other last week when he was on the channel that Halifax probably have a National League South budget. When you're hearing things like that, it just shows where we're at as a club and how we're overperforming. I know Halifax fans, they're quite ambitious and demanding fans, you'd like to think. And I think a lot of that comes down to our history, and probably we've improved. We're at a point where we probably shouldn't be, considering that we've reformed, we've done very well to get into this division. Now the expectation is that we get back into the Football League. But when you've got a budget like we have, it's going to be very hard to do that, and you have to find alternative ways to work around that. And that's something that I think we've done very well in the last couple of seasons. And of course, that's finding players from the lower leagues, attracting them to, you know, the Shea, because you can give them that platform. You know, we've seen a number of players at Halifax, you know, come to Halifax, do well and get a good move into the Football League. And Billy Waters being one, Niall Mars, another one, Kieran Green, Tom Bradbury, Malinik Ali's obviously recently gone up into the Football League as well. And, you know, when you can prove that to players and show them that, then players will be attracted to you. The only issue is, and as you've spoke there about that, is when players do start to show the true potential, they are going to get snapped up. You're not going to have a player there that's going to be there 5 to 6 seasons if they're, you know, proving themselves. Maybe Sam Johnson's the only one that kind of dismisses that. But yeah, for me, I think Halifax, you know, you look at the recruitment, it's what we do every single season, and it does tend to work. So I'm not concerned for this season. And I think we should hopefully be around the same point as what we were last season, just on the fringes of the playoffs, maybe sneaking in. Mr. Luke's come on tonight and said, "Hello, gents. Hope you are well. I'm ready for the season to start now. I've had about enough with pre-season now. Sad to see TNT Sports not doing the National League coverage. Will be missed. Yeah, it certainly will be. And for you, Paul, when you look at pre-season, I've seen a lot of fans complain online about players not taking pre-season seriously and results. How much do you perhaps look into that? Results in pre-season.
I mean, look, you could look at a train of thought that winning, breeding a winning mentality helps, and that starts from pre-season. But ultimately, the results don't matter because they're false. If you go to the top level, Celtic this season have just beaten Manchester City and Chelsea. Do you seriously think Celtic are going to be champions of? If they were in the Premier League, they'll be champions of the Premier League. Of course, it wouldn't happen. So just because a smaller club is beating a bigger club, etc., at any level, it's all down to what the management require out of the players, and hence why they get the minutes they do. They play in the positions they do. They play the teams they do. Managers will pick teams to play because they want to play against a certain type of formation or a certain type of style of play, because actually that might help them in terms of formulating what team they're going to play when the league comes. And it's all, as we all know, they wear those data vests. It's a very stats driven. So it also enables the managers and the coaching staff and the analysts to sort of look at players, especially those that are on trial or those that are on the fringes, to sort of suggest, are they actually any good? Are they what we require? Are they better than what we already have? So, look, from a fan's point of view, we like our teams to win. We always do. But if I'm not going to crow over the fact that Wealdstone have beaten Crawley in a pre-season friendly and then lost to MK Dons, because they played well in patches in both, and you can saw the frailties in both. It's one of those things. But I find pre-season interesting because working out who the trialists are, and I think most of us who like football and non-league football is who's trialist A, B, C, D, etc. is working out who they might have and whether we end up signing them. So, has anyone ever looked at a pre-season schedule in the future and gone, well, we didn't win the league because our pre-season was rubbish? It don't happen, Luke. It's minutes, it's styles, it's cohesion, it's all those things that managers want. That's what they want out of it. If you can breed a winning mentality, all the better. But ultimately, it's to make sure that come August the 10th, the 17th, whenever they start, they are ready to go and try and play for those 3 points.
I just think another way of looking at it, maybe from a fan's perspective, is you're still having to pay money to travel to go to these games. I think, for an example, and I'm using my club here, Halifax again, is, of course, Halifax played Scunthorpe on Saturday, which was, of course, yesterday. I didn't go myself, but we were tempted to go to that game, but we just decided to give it a miss. If you, let's say, travel an hour and 20 minutes, which it probably is from Halifax to that game, you will have spent about £20 on tickets, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you've also got petrol, etc. You're paying all that money to go to hopefully see new players, see the style that they're wanting to implement this season, if it's a new manager or new expectations, for example. And you might go to that game and perhaps you go and it's not to a good standard. And, for example, Halifax lost 1-0. You'd be a little frustrated and maybe a little bit miffed off, wouldn't you? Coming away from that. I understand maybe from the manager's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you would be, Luke, but those that watched any club at any level for a number of seasons are naive to think that pre-season isn't anything but what they require to get ready for the first game of the season. The top end clubs, I would say the Celtics, Man United, yes, they go to America and Australasia and all that because it's a marketing thing, and they'll play teams and mixed teams, and they're ridiculous monies. That's always going to be what they do. Us here, and they're still looking at minutes and those players that could break through from the academy and all that sort of stuff. But the non-league at non-league level, National League level and below, is we would be naive not to think that we're going along to watch our strongest 11 play at 100%, to try and win a game against a team that happens to be 2 leagues below or 2 leagues above. It's just not going to happen, Luke. So, I get your sentiment in terms of it still costs time and money, but I would imagine those fans are going along knowing exactly what they could be in for. Yeah, if we could get a good win against a League Two or League One side, brilliant. If we lose to a National League North side, we're still in National League. Scunthorpe was still in National League North. Comes August the 17th. So, I go along because I enjoy watching football. I like the pre-season. You see your mates again. You work out who the trialists are. You can see what players have got better over the summer or hopefully going to come back and be better. Especially if you've got a new manager like we have, what style of player they play in. That's what I like. That's what I like about pre-season. There's no pressure on any of them. Unless you're possibly a trialist, but it's all geared for August the 17th, and that's the important one for us, isn't it? The first game of the season, wherever we're playing, that's when you want the 100%, and that's when you want them to be sort of going full tilt and wanting to win the game.
Someone's come in and said Braintree are practically a new team since they only kept about 5 players from this season. It's playoff success and got 14 players in this window at the moment. Is that a slight over-exaggeration? Only keeping 5 players. But of course, they're a side that have invested quite heavily. And I think this is quite good from Braintree when I look. It shows, I think, ambitions to not just want, like, the fact of being back in the National League. They clearly want to survive as well. And I know there's this thing about loyalty. There's this question, isn't there, about, well, these set of players got us out of the division. Why shouldn't they be given the opportunity to be able to keep us in the division? And, that you can agree with that to a certain point, but you've also got to look at it from the other side and think, look, these players might be unproven in this division, and we need to be able to attract players that are clearly proven in this division to be able to keep us up. And, you look at the players that they've signed. Callum Powell, of course, from Southend, was a fringe player at Southend and clearly needs the minutes. You'd like to think that he's given a bit of a platform to do that. Brian Clamping, another wing-back, of course, from Eastleigh. I think one of the standout signings will be Ian Effingham, coming from Dagenham. Of course, he's a player that's a little bit inconsistent. 1 week he's very prolific, and not every side's been able to get the best out of him, but we have seen him before at sides when they have been able to get the best out of him. He is probably one of the top strikers in the National League. And we talk about sides down there. If you have a 20-goal a season striker, which in Effingham is capable of scoring that many goals, you're going to survive in the National League, aren't you?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. I mean, I think this week, did they sign Johnny Kinday, who's a little bit more experienced at this level as well? It's really difficult because Angelo Harrop is a very well-respected manager, and I should imagine he'll be quite sought after. They did very well to get out of National League South last season. It was tough. They had Yeovil in that league, who were clearly well equipped at that level to come back up straight away. But as Angelo Harrop looked at this and said, "Look what happened last year. Oxford City got relegated. Kidderminster got relegated. Who else came up? That Fire was it not Files?
Fylde and Ebbsfleet
struggled.
Yeah.
For a long time, Luke, we were talking about the bottom 4 being the bottom, the 4 that got promoted. And Angelo Harrop has probably looked at and gone, we don't want to be in that position. And if we can afford to go and attract players from Southend, local clubs that are slightly higher, or lads that want an opportunity, whether they've experienced or not in the National League, then go for it, and let's just hope that they haven't done too much of a change, too much of a sort of a mix up where it unsettles them. Because when we spoke with Mark White in the earlier this week, he talks very much around having that consistency coming up the leagues and keeping the fellas and the lads that have got you up. And he actually changed it too much this time for a different sort of mixture, and it didn't quite work. So there's always that risk, and there's always a challenge to try and mould a team that is new to you. But I don't blame him for doing it. They've got to stay in this league. Everyone, once they're in the National League, don't really want to drop down to the National League South and National League North. And that's no disrespect to those leagues, but the National League is a fun league to be in. It's where you want to be as a non-league club. So, yeah, listen, they're going to be a bit of an unknown quantity because they have had such a turnover. We know of the names. clearly, the Powells and the Effie Youngs of this world, and they've made some other good signings. So, they'll definitely be one to watch, and they've got a good young manager who's well respected.
I think from Boston's perspective as well, you look at it as they didn't win the league last season. They weren't probably the top 3 sides in the division. I think they finished a little bit lower than that, didn't they, Boston? I think they won the fringes of the playoffs because they had to win all 3 games. So you clearly might think, well, over the course of the season, we probably weren't good enough to go up. So now we have to clearly invest into this squad and get proven players, because that squad is unlikely going to keep us up in this division. And we talk about gaps, and I think in every league there's always a gap to a certain extent, isn't there, between, like, for example, League 2, League 1, the Championship. Obviously there's a massive gap between the Championship and the Premier League, and I think you look overall at sides that tend to do better when they get promoted. It's either sleeping giants that are getting back into a division where they belong or trying to shoot through the leagues, or it's a side that comes up and invests heavily. And I think Braintree are clearly a side that are doing that, and I think being quite intelligent with the signings that they're making as well, because these are players that have been around in this division for quite a long time, might not be having the best time of it at the moment, but when they're on it, they're clearly players that are going to be able to keep you up in this division, and probably players that are probably better than that as well. A side, of course, that won the National League North last season was Tamworth, of course, beat Scunthorpe to the title, and they've come into this division and have kind of been the opposite to that. They've kept the core of the squad from last season, and have kind of added to it to a certain extent. But we look at the signings, of course. Hollis has come from Dorking. Mark White spoke about that on the podcast for those guys that would like to see that. Chris Way, of course, coming from Hartlepool. He's someone at Southend who did very well and then went to Hartlepool. So for you, Paul, how do you, when you look at them and the transfer business that they've done, what's your overall thoughts on that?
I mean, if I'm completely honest, they're a little bit of an unknown quantity to me in terms of what to expect. It'd be interesting to sort of get to know them over the first couple of weeks, what sort of results they get, what formation they play, because as you say, they sort of come up from the outside, didn't they, and sort of gate crashed the playoffs and got in. What we do know is that they're a big enough club to be in the National League. They've been there before. They will know what's expected of them. I genuinely don't know too much about them, and I have to be honest there. And hopefully, I'll get to know a bit more about them over the next few weeks when we start seeing them playing in the National League and get a feel for how they're doing and what sort of team they put out. But they're not going to be shocked by the fact that what the National League is, because having been there before.
Of course, the other sides that have got promoted are Yeovil Town, a side that are well known in this division, dropped into the National League South and have made an instant return. They were always a club, I think we can both agree, that were too big for that division, and were by far the biggest club, I would say, in that division. Of course, they've made a return back into the National League now, and we've spoke to Mark Cooper, and that's, of course, an interview that's going to be coming out this week, so we're looking forward to being able to present that to you guys. But you look at Yeovil, and they're a side, I think, that have kept quite a big core of last season's squad, but a side that, of course, recruited as well. They're with the one side for me where you'd look at them and you'd think they don't particularly have to be signing 10 plus players now they're back in this division, because you'd like to think that squad will be able to survive on its own. Of course, they have invested. Aaron Jarvis is someone that's come in from Torquay, someone that's proven himself in this division before as well. How do you see them doing? Of course, they play quite a distinctive style.
I think, Yeovil are one of those that if they start well, then get a bit of momentum. 5,000 at Huish Park. It's a lovely place to go and play football, but it's quite hostile. Yes. Mark Cooper will play a front foot attacking style type of game. He'll go at people, and like when we spoke to him, it's interesting to see how they do defensively, because they weren't tested massively last year overall in the National League South. But what they have done is they've won a lot of games last year, and that will only breed confidence going into this season. And he's thinned out the squad. He's got rid of Murphy and Hyde and Fisher, the three up top that I think were probably a little bit ineffective for long periods of the season for injuries and other reasons. So, he's brought in Jarvis to replace them. He's kept Newball up top. So, they're not too bad. And he's gone and got a couple of lads from Torquay. He's identified, the ability of some from the National League South when they've played against each other and sort of pick them up. And I think he'll be quite lucky to be able to tap into the loan market in and around that area as well, like we spoke about with him. And I can't see him really threatening, if I'm honest, Luke. I think they're going to have to consolidate, but I don't see them in any real danger of getting relegated, like maybe one of the four did. Some of the four from last year were.
Mm-hmm. Phil's come in and said, as an Oldham fan, I really don't see us doing much this year. Nowhere near title challenges, no goals in the team, and we'll be doing well to make playoffs. And this is something that I partially agree with as well when I look at Oldham. Of course, Oldham aside, last season had ambitions to be in the title race. It didn't go to plan. They didn't even make the playoffs. And going into this season now, you look at the recruitment they've done. It's not like, you won't say it's awful, but it's not amazing. It's not making you go, wow, Oldham are making a stamp on this division. They're going to be in the title race. And there's not many people out there. I don't know what you think, Paul. And of course, there's still time for sides to do their business. But I look at Oldham and you don't particularly look and think, yeah, they're going to be in the title race. And I don't think many fans out there are either.
Oldham are a real enigma, aren't they? They came into this league with a blaze of glory. In well, for a better phrase, I thought they were going to go straight back up and they were going to win the league. And look at Oldham. We're Oldham. We were in the Premier League in '92. We got to the FA Cup semi-final, and he really didn't materialise. Under Unsworth, and they got their feathers ruffled a little bit by the likes of Wealdstone and Dorking. And it's an unusual. They're just an enigma to someone like me because they've got an owner now who seems to have the club at heart and doing it for the right intentions. And he's, off the field, he's a real positive figure and character. They've got a great manager in place in terms of the experience at this level, if not higher. They must have a budget and structure that is the envy of National League for a lot of National League clubs. But they just cannot seem to gain any level of consistency whatsoever. It's just baffling because on paper their players aren't bad at all. I'm not suggesting in reality that are they underperforming? What's the problem? You just hope that Mickey Mellon's going to have a pre-season with that squad. No matter who it is they've signed, he's got a pre-season with that squad. They've got to change the mindset. I mean, I saw them last game of the season against Wealdstone. Wealdstone were going for it a little bit because we had to win to guarantee, winning guaranteed we stayed up, although a number of results would have had to gone the other way if we didn't. And there was only one team that was bothering. And I know Oldham didn't have anything to play for, but it's Oldham at Boundary Park in front of 2,000 or 3,000 people. They should be beating the lights of Wealdstone, and they're just not doing it. And they've really got to get their home form in some sort of order. To have Boundary Park, use it as a fortress, use it as a benefit to them, and it's gone in the reverse. So it's a bit of a shame that you've got Oldham fans in pre-season saying, I don't think we'll get to the titles, we won't challenge for the title, we might not make playoffs. I think the mindset of the supporters, and it's easy for me to say because I'm not involved and I don't know what's going on really out there, but surely if they got a bit more of a positive spin on it and got behind the team, that may help. So, but I know how much they want out of the league, which is fair enough. They're used to bigger things, but they're just a bit of an enigma. And it's one of those, let's see how they get on, Luke. But yeah, I think the general consensus is that it could be another season of struggle for them.
I think maybe you might see it now, and from an alternative view, if you're trying to be optimistic, they've got Mickey Mellon who knows this division. He clearly respects the division. And maybe that's the direction that Oldham are doing. We've seen 15 players leave the club, and we've spoke over the last couple of seasons about Oldham being a side that have got a lot of deadwood players that, need to be shipped on now. There's a lot of journeymen there and players that perhaps aren't playing for the shirt. So they've clearly, I think, kind of shrinked the squad a little bit. But you look at the players that they've brought in. Josh Kay from Fylde, he's a player for me. On his day, I looked at him as an individual. Looked very good on the ball, but clearly had no end product. He wasn't prolific, and maybe Mickey Mellon will look and try and get the best out of him there, where he can start to score more goals. Harry Charsley's come in from Newport County, and he's a player that played a number of games for Newport last season. So I think that's probably the standout signing so far. But apart from that, you look at the signings that they've made, and they've not particularly done too much business at all. And for me, I do look at Oldham, and maybe they're hoping that last season's squad, now that they know this division and have been in this division, perhaps now that they're hoping that they'll be able to respect it more and be able to kind of do well, because they have, of course, got James Norwood, who's a player that's proven himself at this division and higher. And he's a player that's clearly capable of scoring a number of goals. But the thing is, these players are getting on. They've got, I think, one of the oldest squads in the division now. And yes, it's good to have experience, but I think you also need to be bringing in some youngsters as well, who are ambitious about getting out of this division. But a Rochdale fan's coming and said, I would take Rob Harker as a backup striker at Rochdale. I'm surprised he hasn't got a club yet. He's a player for me that I'm quite sad to see go. I feel like at Halifax there were more to come from him. I don't think we saw the best of him. He had a lot of injury issues, but when he did play, he was a natural finisher, and he got a lot of criticism thinking that maybe he needed more to his game. But yeah, he's certainly one for me that I think he'll probably end up at a club like that. I could see him in the league below, at a Scunthorpe or a side like that. We've also, coming in tonight, we've seen Kevin Smith said Ollie Pierce, I think it is, at York, being great in pre-season, very confident striker. And Yorker's side, of course, Paul, we spoke a lot about, and how they've recruited players. And you've kind of been quite bang on, haven't you, with your thoughts on York? You're probably one of the only people out there that's been quite negative in a way on York, you might say, when considering the hype around the club. But how do you see them going into this season now, then, with the signings that they've made? Because they've kind of changed the transfer activity, haven't they?
Yeah, I genuinely think that they could be a threat into the playoffs this year. They've got an owner in Matt Ugler who clearly has money to spend, wants to spend it, enjoys spending it, but has kind of let the manager get on with it, where he maybe not have done that at Yeovil. And that was my biggest concern at York, was him going in there and adopting the model that he did at Yeovil, because it clearly didn't work. We saw that from the outside. But they've recruited players that are good enough for this league, which is what he didn't do when he was at Yeovil. So, yes, he made the change of manager. He brought in Adam Hinshelwood, who is a very, very good manager, plays a great style of football. He had Worthing playing in the National League South at a great standard, considering the size of their club. It wasn't the biggest. And he's allowed Hinshelwood to go and get some players. Pierce is one of those examples. He's come up through the leagues. He was prolific at National League South. He's a fox in the box. He scores all sorts of goals. The sort of player that you want. And if he can adapt to the National League with John Lewis up top and a couple of others experienced lads they've got, then listen, I think York will be a real threat. And I feel so much more confident for them this year than I did last season. Genuinely, last season, the big hype around them, the hype train, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. None of that has come out this season. They're starting to respect the league. They're going about their business quite quietly, really, aren't they, compared to last year? And I think they could be a real threat in and around those playoffs, because they've got themselves sorted out in a positive way.
I think there'll be a lot more goals there at York this season. Of course, last season he didn't score too many goals. Sinclair, of course, another addition to the side. We saw what he did at Rochdale. What's your thoughts on him signing?
Yeah, excellent side. Another one that I should imagine a number of National League clubs would have been keen to have. And I think that's testament to Adam Hinshelwood and the style of football he plays and the type of manager he is, to be able to attract someone like Tyrese Sinclair, because York are a big club at this level, and they should be, but you're still going to have bigger suitors potentially than that looking at Sinclair, because he's a threat. So to have him, to have Ollie Pierce, to get Harrison Mayle from Dorking, who's a very good young goalkeeper, they're three good signings amongst the ones that he's made. So Yeah, I'm looking forward to York in a more positive way than I was last season.
Yeah, I'd agree on that as well. You know, I probably got a bit carried away with York because they were making a lot of signings, weren't they, that looked good on paper, but a bit like how Oldham have done it, where it's kind of what they've done previously, where they're not up and coming players, and I think that's something York are doing now. And Sinclair, someone that's very young, I think can play in the Football League. Pierce, another player. And a lot of people are comparing him to Langstaff. I don't think he'll do as well as what Langstaff has because it's going to take something special for him to do that. But you can kind of see the connection there with him coming from the league below and ripping that apart. You'd like to think he'll be able to make the step up this season. Harrison Mayle as well, a very good goalkeeper from Dorking who's just signed for the club. So for me, York, I think it'll be a very entertaining place to watch football next season. And yeah, I think it'll be a lot better season for them. Of course, Mickey's coming and said, "Evening, Luke. Evening, Paul. Hope you lads are both well. Nearly time for all them Saturday and midweek concerns to start again. Exciting, ain't it? Certainly isn't it, Paul, to get the Predictions League back up?"
Oh, it's good. Yeah, looking forward to it. I think pre-season has its purpose, like we said, but it doesn't beat trying to win 3 points every Saturday and getting to these away games, especially and down to your home ground and seeing all your mates. And because pre-season it's never the numbers that you expect from league fixtures. So yeah, it's a great thing to start looking at and thinking, right, where have we got to go next week? Who have we got in a couple of weeks? Planning trips and deciding which games you can make and all that sort of thing. So, and then obviously our conversations will start, Luke, around who's doing well, who isn't doing well, what players are performing, what managers might get sacked. And the bonkers National League is not many weeks away from starting again.
Yeah, it certainly isn't. And then we've also had Christopher who's come in and said, I think this season is going to be a tough one to call in terms of the league. No obvious standouts like teams like Wrexham, Notts and Chesterfield over the last couple of seasons. Someone's come in and also said, I think Hartlepool will be up there this season. They have kept their strikers and added Campbell. A lot of the top goal scorers from last season have left the National League. Yeah, they certainly haven't. We've spoke about Hartlepool earlier, and I think we're both quite optimistic about them going into this season. And then we've also had Ollie, I believe it is, I think it's a Fylde fan, bought some Fylde business, done some solid signings from a fan's perspective. Although I think we need a couple more players. Yeah, they're a side that I think got better as the season went on, didn't they, last season? And they've been quite busy in this transfer window as well. Yeah, how do you see Fylde doing this season then?
I think what they want to do is build on what they did last year because they started poorly and they looked under real threat. But like you said, they sort of changed the manager and sort of got themselves together, understood what they needed in the league, and they've made some very, very good signings to sort of consolidate. I don't think they're going to be under any threat of getting relegated. They might be nearer the bottom than the top potentially. But it's a club that's got a good structure, a good setup, a nice stadium. They've got everything there to sort of do well. And I think it's just they're probably looking at it, and I could be completely wrong, but they're probably looking at it and thinking, right, let's just do better than we did last year. And the next season, let's do better than we did this season. And just, almost build up a bit like Solihull have, a bit like Aldershot have, try their best just to sort of just build and build and build. And if they have a really good season, then they take advantage of it and get in the playoffs, then they're all well and good. But I don't think there's any threat of them being relegated, but I think they may be nearer the bottom than the top. I'm just going to go back to I was going to go back to what Chris was saying about the even league. I think we touched on this, haven't we, with Mark White, with Mark Cooper, and when we've spoken offline, is who is the outstanding team? We don't think there is one, do we? You could go look at 12 teams who could get into the playoffs. You look at 3 or 4 that could challenge for the top. I think the difficult one is, Forest Green and Sutton coming down. It's very difficult back out of the league straight away, but they're sensible off the field. They're no basket case financially or sort of structurally. So I think they could be very, very difficult to sort of gauge in terms of how they might do. I think they'll do better than some other relegated teams have done in the past. But then, like the likes of Oldham, Southend, Rochdale have got themselves sorted out. Aldershot will be in and around that. Halifax will consolidate. So Dagenham could improve with under Ben Strevens. So all of a sudden you're looking at, wow, how Barnet obviously have invested very, very well under Dean Brennan. Got a good budget there, and they've really used that well. It's a really tough one, Luke. Really tough one to decide on.
Just coming back to what you said on Forest Green and Sutton, more towards Forest Green, but I think they're going to be a side that are going to go against what we usually say when sides come down and struggle, or even sides like last season, Hartlepool and Rochdale coming down. We both thought that they were going to consolidate. I think I thought Hartlepool were going to get inside the playoffs. Of course, that didn't happen. But for me, I look at Forest Green and I'm quite optimistic for them and very confident that they're going to have a good season, because you look at the players that they've brought in. Ben Tozer coming from Wrexham. We've seen what he can do. He's a Football League player. Knowles got 5 assists last season. I think he got about 4 or 5 goals as well. Sercombe, I think that's how you pronounce it. He was at Cheltenham last season and managed to get 11 goals as well. And a number of the players at the site have got EFL experience, but you also look at the history and previous clubs and being at Forest Green as well. There's a lot of players there that managed to get out of this division at clubs at the likes of Cheltenham, at Forest Green as well. So they know what they're doing. Of course, they've got Christian Doidge as well, someone that ripped up this division with Forest Green when they got promoted. And of course, he's a little bit older now. But you'd still like to think that he'll be someone that will be quite prolific this season in this division. And there's a number of sides that have clearly got goal scorers. But for me, I look at Forest Green and I'm quite confident they're going to be able to get in the top 3. Is that something that you'd agree with, or do you think maybe?
I think so because they've got a wealthy owner. They're stable off the field. They just haven't done it very well, and over the last couple of years on the field, they've got a good manager in Cottrell who knows what he's going to have to do to get out of this league. He's kept a lot of his squad. He's added EFL quality players. I just think they've been in our league. They know how to get out of it. And a bit like what Rochdale and Hartlepool have done before, they haven't come in giving it the big one and we're going to get promoted straight away. They're just getting on with it. And Sutton to a degree of the same. I mean, they've had a bigger turnover of players. Sutton, I think they had quite a big squad, and Steve Morrison as a new manager has gone in there and sort of shaking it up a little bit, whereas Forest Green have stayed a little bit more stable in terms of their relegated squad. I think you're right. They're going to be a real threat. I think they just need to make sure they start well, just to get, to sort of get in that top half and not start to get beaten by some of these minnows in the National League. So yeah, I'm looking forward to visiting. Never been there.
Yeah,
looking forward to visiting Forest Green if I get the opportunity and seeing how they do.
You also look Dabo. I don't know if you remember watching him in the playoff final for Coventry. How far he's fallen off. He was one of Coventry's best players a few seasons ago at wing back, and he had that move on after he missed that penalty for Coventry and went to Forest Green, and it didn't particularly work out. It hasn't worked out so far. I know Troy Deeney outed him, didn't he? I don't know if you remember seeing or if you've seen that interview that he did, but he's a player that's capable of probably playing in the Championship, if not the Premier League, in the past. So he's clearly got the ability there. So for me, yeah, you just look at that squad and I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to do well this season. Mickey's come in and said Forest Green will be the team to beat. Vince will throw money at it. Someone's also asked them, and Paul, I know you spoke a bit about this, is National League TV still covering all the games like last season?
From what I understand, yes, they are. I've certainly been asked to sort of be involved in the commentary side for Wealdstone for National League TV. So as I understand it, yes. I don't know how the prescriptions work or subscriptions work, or whether there's changes in cost, etc. But from what I believe is National League TV will still be streaming the games.
Just a few more final signings then that I want to go over that have happened in the last few days. Firstly, Solihull Moors, John Bostock coming to the side. Junior Moraes, of course, going to Dagenham from Notts County. And then Altrincham, of course, have signed Tyler Golden. Let's start with John Bostock then going to Solihull, because that's a statement side. And he's another player that's clearly got the ability to play in a lot higher league, not just League Two, but probably above there. And he's signed for Solihull. I think geographically that works for him. He's clearly based in that area at the moment when he's been at Notts Forest and Notts County and now at Solihull. What do you expect from him then signing for Solihull Moors?
Oh, listen, when he was playing in the National League with Notts County, he was superb. Notts County was superb, weren't they? They were under Luke Williams. Yeah. They were a great football inside, and we all enjoyed watching them. And I think we were quite glad they got promoted because they were almost the opposite to the way Wrexham plays. Wrexham crashed and banged and restarted and free kicks and overpowered teams. Whereas Notts sort of played good football, and Bostock was a big part of that. And he's clearly got a huge amount of talent, having been a teenage protege in the Premier League, and he's gone into France and Belgium. And I think what brought it home to me, really, Luke, was I was watching Notts County versus Wealdstone at Meadow Lane, and my dad turned to me, and he knows his football, and he said, "Who's their seven? God, he is a good, or a number is he's a brilliant footballer, isn't he?" He had no idea who he was. He didn't sort of. I said it was John Bostock. He explained. He goes, "God, he's got so much time on the ball, And I think that's what he will do at National League level. I think possibly League Two was just maybe a bit too much for him at his stage of his career. I don't know for sure, but I know Notts had, the likes of Dan Crowley in there. So whether he was going to get regular game time anyway, and probably wants that at this point of his career too. So listen, a massively good signing. The lad can play football all day long, and I think that will only complement what Solihull have already got with their midfield talent.
Yeah, they certainly have. They've got the like of Osborne in the midfield, Benton and Bowen. That midfield for Solihull's probably got to be up there with one of the best midfields in the division. And of course, Altrincham signing Tyler Golden. Now, I think it's a statement signing, but I think it's a strange one for me. Of course, leaving Halifax, I would go as far to say, and maybe people would say I'm a little bit biased here as I got to see him for every game of the season last year, being a Halifax fan. But I'd go as far to say that he was the best wing back in the division last season. But you look at Altrincham, and of course they've got cover in those positions already, and not just cover, but strong cover. Who was it now? Who was that player we were talking about off air now? Eddie Jones, isn't it? Who plays at wing back for Altrincham, and you look at him, and I'd go probably say he's up there with one of the best wing backs in the division as well. So how are they both going to fit into the side? What would you say about that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, Lou, because if you want to be successful in any league, you need squad depth, and you go as high as Manchester City, and you look at Pep Guardiola, he's got a world-class player for every position, and he can afford to do it, and he's Pep, so he's going to get the best. But I think it's irrespective of the level. If you can, you need to have cover for positions, because if Eddie Jones was going to get injured, who does he play in there? So can Tyler Golden play right midfield? Can he play right wing back? Can he play right back? Can Eddie Jones play centre half as well as right back? So can they then adapt those players to a bit more versatility? So your squad becomes the options within your squad become a little bit more in terms of the players, and we're going to be playing in this. Are we still playing in this nonsense bloody under-21s cup? So there's going to be more games. So you want squad rotation, and that even at National League level, these players are put under a lot of pressure. They get paid well, but they play a lot of football. So you need a lot of good quality players, and bringing someone like Tyler Golden in should make Eddie Jones better, because Eddie Jones is sitting there going, "Fuck, if I don't do this, if I don't do this well." Or they don't play well, I'm going to lose my place in the team. So it adds competition, and competition breeds good performances. And actually also with the competition, it allows the manager to see what the psyche of that player is. Because Eddie Jones as an example, could come in and just sack it off. I'm not interested. You got someone else. Or you could go, F you manager, I'm going to be even better. And then you've got a better squad. So you don't blame him if quality comes onto the market, then you'd take it up, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You move on. These players find other clubs, but I don't blame them for trying to find someone of quality like Tyler Golden.
I think another club as well, Dagenham their side, and specifically speaking about Junior Moraes, somewhere I think for him it's a good move. Somewhere he's appreciated. He got that move away from Dagenham to Notts County, and it didn't seem to particularly work out for him at Notts County. I have to say it was a little bit of a strange one because they've got a lot of cover in those positions, and they did when he firstly moved there. I think it were about 2 seasons now when Notts County got promoted. But him going back to Dagenham for me is a good move for him, but I think Dagenham overall, with the investment that the signings that they've made so far, I'd like to think that they'll be able to have improvements from last season and maybe be able to push on for the playoffs. Is that something that you agree with?
I think so. You know, they've got a very, very good manager in Ben Strevens. We talked this time last year with them sort of changing their squad and stripping it out, and they really struggle with a level of consistency. But you know, I think Ben Strevens is a manager, knows what he's doing, and again, having that pre-season, just not having to worry about getting rid of players, which seems to be over the last couple of years that's happened to Dagenham. They've had it feels to me they've had quite a high turnover of players at times. So I think you just getting them settled with a good manager, getting the likes of Junior Moraes. And I saw him play for Notts County recently in the pre-season friendly against Wealdstone. They need to get that lad fit. He's not fit at the moment. He's a little bit. It looks like he's overweight. You know, he's small and stocky anyway, but he just looks like he's carrying a bit. So I think, you know, it's best for both parties. They get a 6-month loan deal. He goes back to somewhere he's familiar. He'll get loads of minutes. He should score some goals. He'll get himself fit. Notts County then have a decision to make in January. And does he stay at Notts County? Does he stay at Dagenham or move on? So I think that works for both parties. You know, Junior Moraes needs minutes. He's one of those sort of players, but he's very, very well known at non-league level, and he's always done well. So I think that's a good signing for Dagenham, and hopefully for his sake and for Dagenham, he does okay.
I think that almost wraps it up then, the podcast tonight. Paul, as always, it's been a pleasure to have you on and get your insight into the National League. As you can tell, it's a very hard league to predict. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in as well. And yeah, Paul, once again, thank you for coming on.
No problem, Luke. I'm not here next week. I'm on holiday. I'm in Turkey. Hopefully I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time, just before we start the league.
Yeah, we've got our predictions to do, so for those guys watching, we'll be having those predictions. So if you don't hesitate, send me like a direct message if you want about your club. Of course, we'll have those predictions. Last season, we didn't actually get too much criticism with our predictions. It wasn't like the year before, but no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to doing those predictions once again.
I'll sit by the pool, Luke. I'll sit by the pool next week, and I'll have a think about my 1 to 24 ready for our.
This what you were thinking, full screen. Yeah. But no, it should be a good one. I'm looking forward to do that. Also, Mark Cooper, we've already caught up with him. That interview's all recorded, edited, and ready to go. That should hopefully be out in the next couple of days or so. And I think that's it for the moment. So thank you to everyone that's tuned in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.